Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ulvili Vegan Stories, where every week we hear speakers share about their vegan journey and how it has impacted their life and the way they see the world. The series is co hosted by the Kerala Vegan Movement and Sthala. Sthala is passionate about building communities for social change. It brings like minded people together and helps them share, learn, engage, and grow as a community. My name is Amrita. Me and Asta will be your moderators today. So, I've been vegan for the past 5 years and I'm a photographer on the autism spectrum. And I work in animal care and rescue and autism awareness and advocacy. I'm a volunteer in the Vegan World 2026 project by Climate Healers. Asta is from Pune and a vegan activist for the past 3.5 years. She's been working with vegan outreach organizations and traveling to different cities for conducting programs in colleges for students. And I'm really excited to introduce our speaker today for the talk, How Not to Go Extinct. Pareen Sachdeva is an animal liberation activist and a PhD scholar at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. She is the India lead with the US based non-profit Climate Healers and a global climate reality leader trained by former United States Vice President Al Gore and his Climate Reality Project. In the past year, she has conducted workshops with 3,000 plus youth across several cities of India on healing the climate inside out and has addressed numerous forums, including Fridays for Future and the Ahimsa Fest 2020. She has also organized the Compassion Tour of 14 Indian cities in 2019. After becoming a vegan in 2017, she founded Pareen's Plant Based Living, whereby she has a weekly live audience choice cooking show on social media, making simple vegan cooking accessible to people across India. In addition to this, her latest initiative, 10 on 10 on 10, is helping bring activists and thoughtful citizens closer together through meditation and mindfulness. Pareen, thank you so much for joining us today. I request the audience to please keep their mics muted during the session. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat box. Asta will get to them after Pareen's talk and we can have a discussion then. Okay, over to you, Pareen.
Thank you so much. Thank you for introducing me, Amrita, and thank you, Team Ulvili and Sthala and the vegan movement for having me over today. You guys are doing an amazing job. And I'm so grateful and I feel so honored to have been invited today. I just have a little request. I may want to share my screen while I'm talking. So if you could make me co-host, then that'll be great. And I'm just going to go ahead and share my journey with you guys. Now, as I gather, the audience were mostly comprised of people who already know about veganism. So I don't need to tell you about the modern day genocide that is happening in the world today. I'm sure you all are aware about the condition of the animals and what we as humans are putting our fellows through in the name of food, entertainment, clothing, accessories, whatnot. I'm sure you're all aware of that, and I don't need to tell you about it. What I'm going to tell you is how I became vegan and how long it took me and what helped me and what didn't work for me and how I landed up here today in front of you guys. So it was about 3.5 years ago, early 2017. I was new to my further studies program. I just moved to Mumbai, and I was hearing a lot of things about health and fitness and everything that was going on in the world, and I was beginning to connect it all because that is what I wanted to work on for my research as well. I didn't want to write just another thesis. I wanted to make a real contribution to the world. And so it was just inextricably linked to my life as well. And I was trying to get fitter and healthier, and I was practicing yoga and I had been into meditation almost all my life. I'm really grateful that my school taught us to practice yogasana and pranayam and mindfulness. So early on, I had been educated about these things. And as I was trying to get fitter, I was reading up articles and journals and research studies on what the best way to feed our body was, what the best food for us was. And up until then, my idea of a healthy plate, my idea of a good meal was a meal that had eggs or meat on it and a whole bunch of veggies on it. I was. Is anybody facing an issue hearing me?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, up until then, my plate was mostly comprised of meat, eggs, and veggies. Thankfully, I'm still having veggies, but yeah, a very, very little fat, and mostly, carbs from veggies and a lot of eggs and dairy and meat to meet my protein needs and to make me stronger. Until I actually started reading instead of just believing what they tell us. How they say ghee is important, how they say that you need meat to build muscle. And I came across the work of amazing medical doctors who are trying to bring this awareness to their fellow doctors who are barely taught about nutrition, and also to lay folk like us. So I came upon Dr. Neely Bernard's work. I came across Dr. Nika Bajekar's work. If you guys would like, towards the end of the presentation, I can share their links with you all so that you guys can also refer to them. So there are amazing organizations that are working on this, nutritionfacts.org. Then there is the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And then there's also this amazing documentary called What the Health that Climate Healers has co-produced. So I thought, all right, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to leave meat and dairy off my plate and eggs off my plate. I'm going to see what happens. And things really changed for me. To my surprise, I'd been facing certain issues that started disappearing. I started losing, I used to be a little plump, and I started shedding that fat, and I started getting stronger, which is something that I used to be worried about always. And around that time, I also went for a meditation course, and that just switched things up for me. Before going there, my parents thought, okay, well, she's trying something new, let her. She likes to experiment, let her. She'll come back to her senses. She'll stop doing this nonsense. How can she not eat paneer? How will I serve? My mother used to think, how will I serve her dal without tarka? Because they make tarka with ghee. And today I want to share this little milestone with you, which I haven't shared with anyone yet, but I think this is a great place to share it. My mother, usually what she does is she separates out the dal for me before she puts tarka in it for the rest of my family. Now she has started separating her own dal as well. So it's my mom and I. It may look like a small step, but it's taken a while to get here. And it's really a milestone for me. So anyway, I kept researching, I kept growing, and I feel like my spiritual practice really helped me through this. We'll talk about that a bit more if you would like. And then I started volunteering. I started volunteering to raise awareness about this. It helped me. So I thought that more people need to know about this, because once I understood what veganism really is, and it is not just a diet, then I understood what it was doing to me, to my own mind, to my own mental state. And that light bulb just went off in my head, and I needed everybody to know. I needed the world to know about this. And so I started small. I started volunteering with the vegan outreach organizations. I started working with the Save movement, with a couple other organizations as well. I volunteered with until I started working with Climate Healers as well. And last year, like Amrita told you guys, we organized the Compassion Tour where we visited 14 Indian cities, and in about 25 days, we had approximately 30 events. It was a whirlwind. It was amazing. And we met so many of you all over India. And I think it was a game changer, not just for me, but for the vegan movement in India as a whole. And now, we have so many people talking about it. We have so many businesses that are working on products that are vegan, that are eco-friendly. So this is really a shift that keeps on coming. It's not a one-time thing. It's like an evolution, and we just keep on growing and growing. And I don't know if there are any anime fans here, but Hayao Miyazaki has said that it is our nature that time and again we keep getting disconnected from our very nature, and we keep trying to reconnect with it. And I feel like through this endeavor, we are also coming back home to ourselves, coming back home to our true nature, away from all the conditioning, all the marketing that we've been subjected to, all the advertising, everything that they have been saying to us. And as we keep learning, as we keep evolving, we keep, changing and growing for the better. And that's what we need right now, with climate change, with global warming, with the problem of hunger and starvation all over the world. There are places that are not receiving any rain, and then there are places that are fraught with floods. Take the cases of India, for instance, right here at home, right? There are fires in the Himalayas, there are floods in the eastern Ghats. What's happening? We as humans, there is no doubt that we have a huge impact on the planet. Just like every other species, we also have a role on the planet. But we need to understand that the planet will outlive us. Now, what kind of a planet do we want to leave? How do we want to leave? What is the way in which we want to leave? That is for us to decide, and that is for us to change and figure out and shape. And that is what my work with Climate Healers is all about. That is what the Vegan World 2026 project is all about. It's about coming home to our true nature. Just like the bee in the forest, just like the elephant in the forest is doing their bit, us humans, we've done our bit. In the past 100 years, we have achieved amazing technological advances. We're able to reach from one part of the globe to another in a matter of hours. Look at this. We're sitting in the comforts of our homes across cities of India, sitting in front of our devices, looking at each other's faces, talking, exchanging ideas. We wouldn't have been able to even imagine this 100 years ago. We've done amazing things. Another amazing thing that we've done is we have raised the average temperature of the planet through the process called global warming. Okay, what is global warming? There are gases like carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, etc., methane, that capture the sun's heat into the atmosphere of the sun, okay, which heats up the atmosphere, and that is called global warming. And as it continues over a period of years, it leads to climate change. It leads to change in the patterns, in the climatic patterns, and that is what we're seeing. So even though we've done a great job, we've acted as a thermostat species, and we have possibly postponed another ice age. Right now is the time to wake up and, you know, get a little slap here and there and be made aware of the fact that what we have done is enough and we don't need to go any further. And another really important factor in this is animal agriculture, which nobody really talks about. Okay, we're all talking about fossil fuels, how fossil fuels have led to the rise in the global temperatures, and that fossil fuels, the burning machine, it is definitely a big factor. But what we fail to talk about is the killing machine, animal agriculture, where we're breeding, raising, and killing billions of animals every year to raise them for our food, our clothing, our entertainment, our sports, our zoos, circuses, animal testing, you name it. And we're doing it in the name of our needs or our desires, right? So we need to tackle both the burning machine and the killing machine, not just burning machine, okay? Now, if you want to talk about the nuances of how these work, you can ask me questions later or reach out to me. Amrita will share my details with you guys. But I want to close this talk and open the floor to questions now with just this little thought, however selfish it might be, that, you know, we love our children or our to-be children. We say we want to do everything possible for them. We want to leave money and property and whatnot for them. We want them to have a comfortable life. But what are we going to give them if they don't have air to breathe or water to drink? Right? So we really need to remember this, that it's not that we are leaving things for our future generations. We actually have them on leave from them. So it's our duty to take care of these resources. It's our duty to take care of nature and be part of nature. Okay, thank you. Thank you for listening to me today. And Amrita, please.
Thank you so much, Pareen. Like, it's always so wonderful to hear you speak about this, and it's so thought-provoking. I'm sure everybody like feels the intensity with which you've shared, and thank you for sharing your journey as well. So you mentioned about meditation. So could you share the role spirituality has played in your vegan journey?
Yeah. So near about the time I heard about the plant-based diet and I started researching, I also heard about the Vipassana. I had, in all my years of practicing yogasana and mindfulness and whatnot, and all different kinds of practices, I'd never heard of this. But the moment I heard about it, I think within a matter of months, I was sitting in my first course. It was just, and you know, people say that it's just, if the seed is in you, then there's no stopping you. You just have to water it, and it keeps growing. And Vipassana really, it's nothing more than being present, observing what really is, and staying equanimous with it. And it really helped me on a practical level as well. Of course, you know, the goal of meditation as we view it is to achieve some kind of a state, to achieve some kind of an enlightened state. But that's not the totality of it. It helps you every day. And on a practical level, it helped me stay vegan. I was living away from home when I started doing this, and I was responsible for everything on my own, cooking my meals, taking care of myself, and working and everything, right? And it was all new to me. That life was new to me, and I feel like without the support, without the strength that this gave me, without the strength that my spiritual practice gave me, I probably would have had a much harder time doing it. So I would say that, and also, you know, what they teach you about Maitri, which is just loving kindness. There's a little prayer that you say that says, may all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be liberated. I heard it for the first time, and my mind immediately went to the animals, the billions of animals that were shackled just because of us. And I could not hold myself. It was all so clear to me that everything that we have been told does not matter. Nothing matters if we are not kind to each other. Nothing matters if we cannot put that kindness into practice. And right now, it's just us humans that are failing to put that kindness into practice. All beings have kindness in them. All beings have compassion in them. I'm sure you've seen videos of animals comforting each other. They love their families just like we do. They cry for them. They laugh with them just like we do. But unfortunately, we are the ones who seem to have lost the connection. And I feel like a level of spirituality can really help bring that back within us. And that is the reason why I started 10 on 10 on 10 as well, which is nothing but 10 minutes of meditation on the 10th of the month at 10 o'clock. So 10 on 10 on 10. We all come together and we do a live meditation every month. And every month I've been grateful that such amazing people have come forward to help guide the meditation. And this month, on the 10th, 3 days from now, we have Dr. Will Tuttle, who will be doing a music meditation for us. He is such an amazing presence. He's the author of the World Peace Diet, and he's a musician. And he is going to be with us on the 10th, and he'll be leading the meditation. So you all are welcome to join. It'll be live on Facebook and Instagram, and definitely join. Someone is asking how. I think you can share the link.
So we'll be sharing the links to her social media platform. So thank you, Pareen. Like you make it. It's been such a holistic growth for you, the veganism, and it's so inspiring to hear. Thank you for sharing. So Asta will be taking the rest of the questions.
And then lead on to the answers of these questions. So all of these things that you see on the circle, these are the problems, these are the environmental challenges that we're facing today, okay? So there is deforestation, climate change, the species extinction, habitat loss, ocean acidification, the problem of waste management, water use, land use, the fisheries that are diminishing. All of these problems that we're facing today are all linked to the animal agriculture industry. Okay. In fact, you'll be surprised to know that majority of the transport, so air, land, and water. Okay, so all of the air transport, all of the planes that we're flying, all of the land transport, so the buses, trucks, trains, cars, everything, and the water transport, so all of the ships and the submarines. Collectively, all of this transport is not emitting as much greenhouse gases as the animal agriculture industry alone. Okay, according to the FAO estimates, the greenhouse emissions of the of all of transportation stand at 13%, while there are varying estimates for animal agriculture. One stands at 18%, another one stands at 54%, and a new calculation by Dr. Sailesh Rao, who's the founder of Climate Healer, stands at an astounding 87%. So you're welcome to look at the figures and see how the calculations are done and try and do them yourself as well if you'd like to. So definitely, when we say that we need to tackle the problem of animal agriculture, when we say that we need a shift towards a plant-based system, that does not mean that we will stop looking at other issues. Okay, that is a big part of the Vegan World 2026 project. That veganism is at the base of it. A shift to plant-based is at the base of it. It's at the core of it, but that's not the end. We need to tackle everything, and we need to understand that there is no single issue struggle in this world. Everything is connected. Okay? So when we say that we need to tackle animal agriculture, we are not saying that we need to stop, reduce the use of plastic or reduce the use of fossil fuels. No, that is not what we're saying. But what we're saying is, when we tackle the problem of animal agriculture, we're able to free up a third of the world's ice-free land. When we can free up a third of the world's ice-free land, we free it up to reforest it. Okay? When we reforest it, we're able to sequester the carbon that is already in the atmosphere. Now, that is something that if we only work on reducing fossil fuels, we won't be able to tackle. Okay? If we stop fossil fuel emissions, yes, we are reducing the amount of carbon that is added into the atmosphere, but there is a lot of carbon that is already in the atmosphere that needs to be sequestered. Okay? And just stopping fossil fuels is not going to deal with that. We need to work on sequestering or absorbing that carbon as well. And that can be done only through the lungs of the planet, only through the forests, right? But right now, in the name of development, in the name of putting train tracks to transport coal, take the example of Goa, how the people of Mallam are protesting this right now. So right now, we're failing to understand, and with the whole issue of the draft EIA earlier this year, right? So what we're failing to understand is that we need the greenery. We need to come home to our nature instead of looking at it as a mere resource, instead of looking at it as a source of raw materials that can be exploited. We need to look at it in a more wholesome way, and that is what we're advocating for. I'm going to stop sharing.
Great. That was some resourceful information from your side, Pareen. And people really need to know all these things because indirectly we are the ones who are contributing to all this distraction, right? So in India, like we have been consuming milk a lot, obviously for a very long time, milk and ghee for generations. And it is such a big part of our culture. So how can we ask people to stop consuming milk? Like when Krishna also had milk, obviously people see these things and they follow something that they have been hearing for such a long time. So how can we ask people to stop consuming milk then?
Very important question. Again, we are a country that is rife with all kinds of beliefs and stories and things that we like to cling on to because we're comfortable in them, because we think that it's so hard, I already have so many problems, I cannot think about this right now, right? So we're so comfortable in our set beliefs and patterns and ways of thinking that a lot of times we fail to understand that there is no logical basis to them. In our belief patterns, not to the stories, okay? Not the stories. I'm not questioning the legitimacy of mythological stories at all. No. In fact, I'm going to derive from the story of Krishna to show you how illogical it is to believe that just because Krishna liked butter, we should also have butter. Krishna also lifted the Govardhan mountain on his pinky finger. We do not take that literally. Krishna sat on the hood of was it a 4-headed snake or a 7-headed snake? 7-headed snake. We do not take that literally. But when we say that Krishna stole butter, we think that it's a Krishna given right to consume milk and butter. But think about this. What does Krishna see in milk? And this is a story that, this is an understanding that I've learned from Dr. Rao that I'll be sharing with you all. Think of milk as your own fluid mind, okay? And you add curd, which is the thought of God. You add that curd to the milk and let it curdle. Let the thought of God curdle in your mind, okay? And then you churn it into butter, which is a solid mind that has no more doubts about God, okay? That is the mind of a devotee. And that is why Krishna loves butter. Krishna loves the solid mind of a devotee. And then you refine that butter into ghee, which is a clarified solid mind of the devotee that has absolutely no more doubts anymore. What is this mind? This is a symbolism for enlightenment. That is why ghee is considered so pure. This is a symbolism for the enlightened mind. It means that you see things the way they are. You're not clouded by delusions anymore. So we fail, a lot of times, we fail to understand that a lot of these stories, we fail to understand the symbolism in a lot of these stories and end up taking them literally, which is not the way they were meant to be taken. So we are not Krishna. And we need to understand that every mammal produces milk for their own offspring when they're infants. A mother produces milk because she's a mother, not because she's a cow or a buffalo or a donkey or a horse or a camel, because they all produce milk and so do we. And humans, we stop, taking milk, taking our mother's milk within a year after we're born. But humans are also the only species, the only mammals that continue to drink milk as adults, and that too the milk of another species. That is something to think about and, derive your answer on your own instead of me telling you to stop. I won't ask you to stop.
So rightly said, Pareen, and definitely people will definitely understand this. And this leads to one of the questions that I had in mind. So we all know that population in India uses lots of milk and milk product, like it's a part of their everyday life. And there are so many dairy farmers in cities and villages whose livelihood depends on their business, like dairy farming business. So if people go vegan or if they reduce or stop consuming milk, then what will happen to the livelihood of these farmers? And what do you think, where will all the cows or buffaloes go if they're not produced or breeded for the milk?
Okay, wonderful. So two very important aspects of the people exploiting the animals and the animals that are being exploited. So first, coming to the livelihoods. Right now, plant-based industries are on the rise, and the logical shift for animal-based farmers is to be towards a plant-based agriculture, so to produce plant-based alternatives. That would be the logical, economical shift that can take place. And there are a lot of independent researchers and also certain international organizations that are working to help people make that transition. Okay, and we feel that business and you move to kind.
Pareen, your voice is breaking. Pareen? Right. You're on mute.
Okay.
We missed like a half a minute.
Okay. So what I was essentially saying is there is a beautiful short film, a 15-minute short film called 73 Cows. It's available to watch for free. Just go to their website and you can watch it. Alex Lockwood, he's also working on another amazing film that's going to come out soon. Now, this is the story of a beef farmer who had 73 cows on their farm, and they made the connection and they stopped and they made the transition. So this is something that is absolutely possible. Now, this leads us on into the film is called 73 Cows, Jaya. Okay. Now, this leads us on to the next question, which is what will happen to these cows, which is also tackled beautifully in the film 73 Cows they show you. So the thing is, the reason we're wondering about what will happen to these cows and buffaloes and the other animals that are on these animal farms is because there are so many of them. Now, the reason there are so many of them is because we have bred them into existence. Naturally, if they were allowed to breed, if they were allowed to live free and breed on their own, they would not reproduce at the scale that we are making them reproduce through a lot of different practices of artificial insemination. Okay, so firstly, we stop breeding them. Okay, so we stop bringing more of them onto the planet, so to speak. And secondly, we need to develop mechanisms that are already coming up to shelter and to house these animals for their last remaining days, for the rest of their days. Okay, so there are a lot of animal sanctuaries, a lot of shelters that are working on this. Okay, so where I live, there's a beautiful place called All Creatures Great and Small, and they really have truly all creatures great and small. They have emus that have been imported from Australia for their oil and their eggs, but were abandoned because the business was not fruitful anymore. They have cows and buffaloes that had to have their legs amputated because they were left out on the streets and they met with accidents, and so they had to be treated. They have horses and they have nilgai and they have, you name it, and they're housing them. And we have these all over India and all over the world as well. Okay, there is
Okay. So if anybody has questions, you can also unmute yourself and ask. Okay, Pareen's back. Okay.
I haven't heard about Vinod has mentioned something in the chat box. So I'm not aware of ZBNF. Can you share a bit more about it, Vinod?
So this is called, it is being called spiritual farming as well. It is by a person called Subhash Palekar. It's very gaining a lot of popularity on the eco-friendly farming perspective, as well as it will reduce your cost. Let's say an acre, they are spending close to 6,000 rupees per year. So it reduces the farming cost in general, and it is a very sustainable way of farming. So what I'm able to observe is people are actually moving towards animal-based farming because it brings down cost to them, and it is not like a brutal way to treat an animal as well. They have a lot of ways to actually take care of the animal as well. So it is a very extremely complicated issue when you get into things like this, especially linking to what Asha had said before, right? The small farmers are okay because they may not be having a lot of resources for them to sustain their lives and things like that. So I just wanted to actually hear about your thoughts on the same, and how do you think, if at all, we can help getting them to actually move something against that one?
Okay. Uh,
There seems to be some connection issue.
yeah, I lost you again. Parin, you're on mute.
Yes, so there's a power issue. The power keeps, there's something with the transformer that's happening. It's really not in my hands. I'm so sorry. Yes. So from what from what I understood from what Vinod has shared is, it seems like something that's on the regenerative farming model where they're using animals. It yes, no doubt it is gaining a lot of popularity. But then again, it is the same thing. Two things actually. First, if something is using animals, if you're using animals on a large scale, it is just not sustainable. I'll tell you why. Every year, we are raising and killing about 60 to 70 billion land animals alone. Okay? There are no numbers for sea animals that are killed because they're measured in kilos. They're not even measured in numbers. Okay? There are trillions of them. All right? So I'm going to stick to land animals. Every year, we're breeding and killing 60 to 70 billion land animals. Okay, just for food, entertainment, clothing, etc., etc. All the things that are included in the animal farming industry. Okay, how many humans are there on Earth? 7.5 billion. Estimates have shown that we grow food, plant-based food, so grains, seeds, legumes, that are enough to feed 10 billion human beings. And yet, millions are dying of hunger. 80% of all starving children on the planet are in countries that are growing feed, that are producing feed to export for animal agriculture. Okay. But a few people can then have that second-hand nutrition that is passed on to the animals and then consumed through their meat or their bodily secretions. So we need to understand that even though it may appear so, there is nothing sustainable about any animal. I may have lost my connection. I hope you guys got the answer though. Amrita, was I clear?
Yeah, like just to the last 10 seconds or so, it got a bit. But yeah, I would like to add to that. The expo that happened, no, there was a very interesting talk there. I'm just sharing it, Vinod. I'm sharing the link to the talk. So it's about research that's showing that the small scale farmers in India, they actually are not able to make a proper livelihood from dairy as such. Because, so I think you'd find it interesting. Please do hear the talk.
Sure, Amrita. So I just would like to correct here. It is actually not an
Oh
animal.
yes.
It
Important
is
thing to understand. Rupees is because it's heavily subsidized. And the reason it's subsidized is because it's not a sustainable industry, but it still employs a majority of our population. And yeah, that's something to really think about. All these industries are not sustainable, and the world over, animal agriculture is heavily subsidized. Trump is, I think, as in comparison to any other president of the United States, he has given subsidies to animal agriculture, I think 250 times more than any other president has ever given. So yeah, this is something to consider as well. There's absolutely nothing sustainable about using animals.
So I would like to correct here. It is actually not like animal husbandry or something. What I'm saying is, it's like for an acre, they say that you
I'm unable to hear Vinod.
one cow, and the cow dung make up.
Vinod, your voice is
Just
breaking.
basically go ahead and probably the
Vinod, there's some network problem, I guess, from your side because we couldn't hear properly. So I would like to say that, like, this Drishti rightly actually said that industries will evolve and new jobs will get generated. Obviously, so if animal industry goes away, new jobs and livelihood will get created. So it will definitely help the dairy farmers and dairy businesses. Pareen, so you have actually, if anyone has any questions, they can put it in the chat box. Or if you have any question, you can directly unmute your mic and ask. Till then,
And
like,
Vinod,
Pareen, you have, yeah. Please go ahead.
sorry, I wasn't able to hear you, but if you would please email me at sachdevapareen@gmail.com, that'll be great, and we can continue this conversation. Yes, Astha.
Great. We'll again share your social media handles. So, Pareen, you have done so much of research, and definitely we would really love to read your research. So, if anyone wants to read it, would you be happy to share it with us? Like, anyway, like, they can contact you directly on social media or directly mail you.
Yes, you can connect with me on Facebook. So I'm most active on Instagram in terms of social media, but I reply to my emails, obviously. And you can connect with me on Facebook as well, and then of course Twitter and Pinterest and YouTube. There's stuff everywhere.
Pareen, we lost you again. Yeah, at the end we couldn't hear because there was some network connection, I guess. Sorry.
I was saying that as soon as I publish my research, you guys will be the first ones to hear about it.
Great. Thank you so much. And Amrita, over to you if you have anything to say and ask.
Yeah, actually, that was my question about your research because it was so interesting what you'd mentioned that it's about a sustainable future, isn't it? So, would you like to share something about it? Like, we'd be interested to know.
Surely. So, like I touched upon initially, that this is not just about a shift towards a plant-based system. it is definitely
Uh, we're patiently waiting. Ah, okay. So,
yes. I'm so sorry about this.
it's okay.
Yeah. So I think can just quickly tell you. Uh, so essentially, what I'm trying to build is an alternative economic model that is not based on exploitation. As of now, right now, the capitalist or the mixed economy that we're living in is based on the exploitation of labor by people who own property and have ownership of that property. I am trying to come up with something that is not communism, but is also not based in exploitation. And so there are a lot of bits and pieces in this that need to be worked upon, a lot of shifts that will need to happen, and a shift towards a plant-based system is definitely a big part of it, and several other aspects that I am not free to share about presently. Uh, but I hope that, but if there is anybody who's interested in this line of research, then definitely you can email me, and we can see if we can work together. Yeah, that's all I can talk about right now in terms of the research. You're muted, Amrita.
So thank you, Pareen. So we'll be sharing. We'll share your social media handles again. So anybody, if you have any more queries or you want to discuss with her, then I think Pareen would be more than happy to, talk about. Okay. So thank you, Pareen. It was a brilliant talk and the discussion as well. Like so many aspects, and I'm sure everybody's taken a lot. And it's also so wonderful to hear you speak. You make it all seem so simple, and like so. It gives a very hopeful view of the future. So thank you so much. And what else? Oh yeah. So one last thing that I wanted to ask was, um, uh, it would be nice. Like I'm sure everybody would want to be a part of the solution as well because they do know about uh, climate change. So if you just talk a little bit about the Climate Healers Project and how everybody can contribute in any way.
Yeah. So how Climate Healers really started was, so Dr. Rao, I followed in his footsteps really to get trained as a global climate reality leader. Dr. Rao is one of the original engineers of the internet. He led the team that developed the gigabit Ethernet, the one that is connected to the modem that we use to connect to the internet. And we're using it in the same way that he developed it. There's been no new developments in that. And yeah, so he was very successful in his engineering career until he watched the presentation by Al Gore, and that really changed things for him. And he went on to get trained by Climate Reality. He was also trained by Al Gore himself. He went on to give a lot of lectures. Then he understood about this aspect that I'm sharing with you today about the plant-based systems, and also about how Climate Reality wasn't really addressing it. And that is how Climate Healers was born. He was doing a lot of grassroots projects initially in India and in other parts of the world. Right now, Climate Healers is focusing on a lot of research and developing these alternate systems, developing alternate currencies. We're working on a universal basic income model as well, on an understanding of UBI and how that may be a part of the solution as well. Other than that, new endeavor is food healers, which is helping provide nutritious vegan meals to people who are in need. If you would like to know more about this, Amrita has shared the link to climatehealers.org. You can just click on that, or just climatehealers.org, and within 5 seconds of you opening the website, a pop-up appears. And if you would like to join us, if you would like to be connected with all the hundreds of climate healers across the globe, you can fill that Google form. It will take you about 5 to 7 minutes to fill. And you can join us. It will lead you to our Basecamp platform, which is an online working platform. And you can just tweak your email settings and everything, if depending on how many emails you'd like to receive and what notifications you'd like to receive. And there you will find all the teams that are working on all the different aspects. See where you can best contribute, or where you can best learn from. It's not just give from your end. There's a lot that you will get to learn from there as well, just by joining and reading the conversation and what is going on. Right now, everything, all the public talks that Dr. Rao is giving, that I am giving, everything, all the public work that Climate Healers is doing is available for free to watch on Climate Healers Facebook. So if you go to Facebook, if you go to the Climate Healers page, all the talks are available for you to watch. We just concluded the Vegan World 2026 Convergence, which happens quarterly. We just concluded that. It was a 2-day event during the World Vegan Day celebrations. All the talks that took place during those 2 days are available to watch. Watch what interests you, ask your questions, reach out to us. We would like to learn from you as well, if you have expertise in this field and how we can develop, because we're in this together. We're into creating this vegan world by 2026 together. So join us and let's create a vegan world. Let's create a kind world together.
So rightly said, Tareen. Okay, so we are at the time to leave. So thank you, Tareen, again. Thank you so much. You've given us so much information for everyone. And thank you, the audience. Also, thank you so much for being here. So the next session that we'll be having will be with Shweta Savla on making the connection, the reason human beings have a moral agency to not cause unjustified harm. So we'll be sending you the details soon. And yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, you guys. You guys are wonderful and you're doing amazing stuff. Keep doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you
all. Thanks. Thank you, Asta.